Check 1, 2. Be the laureate. This is where you at. And yeah. While growing up, I would see working men walk the streets, going home to their family with relatives who wanna eat. All together, they would feast, more connected than we be, more collected than free teas. Come as the summer's breeze, heard the words from their mother. Kids, look out for each other. Even if there's no relation, one should bail out a brother. Love is when one sacrifice, leave others with the better life. Some are fighting that good men fight, some are fighting just for that prize, while taking it from their own kind, becoming the victim like they don't mind. Being marked like they've gone blind, why they seen in these dark times. We are the people, we are them people, born to rule, born to reign, not through the dream, not born again. Cause we are the people, we are them people, born to rule, born to reign, not through the dream, not born again. Drunken.
Hey, yo plebs, welcome to another episode of BOB Radio. BOB stands for Build on Bitcoin, and we talk to Bitcoin builders from around the globe. Today, we have another special episode of BOB Radio on tour in the beautiful city of Da Nang, Vietnam, where we have just finished up attending the first Lightning Conference organized by Neutron Pay. Good times. Our special guest today with us in the studio in Da Nang is Mr. Kgothatso Ngako from South Africa. He's better known to you guys as Machankura. Welcome, Kgothatso. How you doing, brother?
I'm all good, Piccolo. How you doing?
Excellent, excellent. Okay, as we sort of talked out before, we'll start us off with some rapid fire questions. Take us away, Sovereign.
Ready?
I'm good.
Best cuisine in Africa?
Archer.
Nice.
What do you like to do in your free time?
I write code.
Personal success or hyper-Bitcoinization?
Hyper-Bitcoinization.
Favorite music artist?
Income.
And last one, why not Bitcoin?
Why not Bitcoin? Because you're about to die and you have to send it to somebody.
There you go.
Can't take it to the grave.
Oh, great. Okay, excellent. Oh, I love that answer. Haven't had that before, have we? Okay, excellent. All right, maybe we keep that question because we were having doubts yesterday, man, when we asked why not Bitcoin to some of these OG Bitcoiners. They're like, that's kind of a stupid question, but thank you for making us feel good again. That maybe that's a good question, perhaps. We'll see. All right. Thank you, Sovereign. Let's go into the next segment, which is sort of your personal journey and philosophy, sir.
Hello.
So, Kgothatso, who are you on Machankura, and what is your personal orange pill journey?
Yeah, so who am I? I'm Kgothatso Ngako from South Africa. Right? Basically a catalyst. Right? And the word catalyst is something I came up with when I was trying to figure out what a founder is, right? And what a co-founder is, and what an early employee is, and so on and so forth. Right? So yeah, then I settled on catalyst because the definition of a catalyst is something I find quite interesting. Accelerating a reaction to the desired state without getting burnt out. So yeah, and I think the last part is also very important, without getting burnt out, because I've seen quite a lot of people start businesses and run businesses and they get burnt out. And yeah, so for me, if you do want to start a business and it's a new form of business that is, hasn't been tried before where you are, you shouldn't burn out while doing it, right? Because it's either at some point in time, everyone else catches up with whatever idea you had initially, and where are you going to be at that point?
Right.
usually you want to be there so that you actually enjoy the
Sure.
success,
Okay.
instead of not being there because you fell off along the way.
Yep.
And this thinking also comes from my time as a teenager. I
Okay.
used to rap, and
No shit.
yeah.
All right.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Cool. So usually we intro the thing with 1 minute music, so we know,
Mhm.
we'll see if we get some original music in there, sir. All right.
Cool.
Sweet.
Mhm.
All right.
I'll send you a link to my mixtape.
Oh,
Let's go.
hell yeah. All right.
Mhm.
Okay, so how did you find Bitcoin, or how did Bitcoin find you?
Oh yeah, so basically, I stumbled upon Bitcoin multiple times
Okay.
and ignored it pretty
Okay.
much.
Yep. Just like most of us?
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
every time I stumbled on it. First time I was in university and in the lecture, and lecturer basically started the class by saying this will not be in the exam. So I stopped paying attention at that point.
Okay.
And
Like most of us?
yeah. And then a few years after that, or a year after that, I got a bug bounty reward for $1,000 US.
What year was that?
I don't know, 2016,
Okay.
2015,
Okay. Yeah,
somewhere
yeah,
there. And yeah, my payment options were either via Bitcoin or PayPal.
Right.
So cool. Research, got a Bitcoin wallet.
Yeah.
Research, got a PayPal account.
Right.
So then I was like, what am I going to do with this Bitcoin after receiving it?
Right.
And ultimately, the answer was nothing. Hodl was not a word.
Right.
And then I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with this PayPal balance after I receive it? And then I could, use it on eBay, Bandcamp, all these different places.
Right.
So I took the payment in PayPal, bought a laptop, and bought some songs off of Bandcamp.
Sure.
And yeah, then what happened? Oh yeah, 2017 happened, and I'm like, oh man, I totally didn't evaluate that correctly.
Right.
And yeah, then I was like, let me see, and started shitcoining. And then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Maybe I didn't evaluate that correctly again.
Right.
And yeah, so I went down the rabbit hole, read a few books, economics books, investment books, the Bitcoin Standard, Human Action, and I'm like, okay, this Bitcoin thing has a lot of good potential.
Sure.
And especially in Africa, where, a lot of African countries have not chosen their own currency.
Right.
Well, the 15 ones that are still using the CFA, the colonial franc currency.
Yeah. CFA franc.
Yeah, CFA franc.
The fucking stupid ass slave currency. Sure.
Yeah, those ones always come up. But then all the other countries that were colonized, and the currencies that they use in those countries are not a product of the people.
Right.
They are a product of colonization, whether it's Zim dollar, Namibian dollar, South African rand, so on and so forth.
Yep.
So I feel like
none of them are independent standalone currencies.
They
really, right?
They are, but not to. If you look at the history, they all began in colonization.
Right.
Well,
They're all based on some sort of colonial monetary system.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So then I was asking someone about like the Vietnamese dong, since we're in Vietnam.
Yep.
Right? And then the Vietnamese dong has a history that extends, to whatever the emperors were using. I think the coin and the transition to paper, so on and so forth. And I'm like, wow, it would have been great if I was able to do that with African currency. Like to when we use livestock and cowrie shells. You remember I had the Bitcoin cowrie t-shirt.
Yeah.
So it would have been great if we could do that with African currencies. But there's a huge, barricade in monetary history in Africa. From whatever we used in the past to colonial currencies.
Right.
Yeah. So for me, I'm like, okay, Bitcoin presents us with an opportunity whereby we could actually continue that journey as people to decide what we use as money.
Right.
And then we have a monetary future.
Okay. So by this time, So 2016, 2017, it must have been like your third or fourth touch with Bitcoin, right? That
Yeah.
you began researching it. Was part of that research the Bitcoin white paper as well?
Yeah, 2017, 2018.
Okay.
Yeah, I read the white paper.
Did you
but
understand it?
Nah.
Okay.
I,
Well,
I
again,
understood
you're
it.
just like most of us. We
Yeah.
don't understand it the first time we read it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I understood it technically.
Right.
Because a software developer, computer
I
science.
understood that it was written in English.
You see. But then I was like, okay, cool. Now what?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So only after taking a deeper dive into the other aspects,
Sure.
Easter eggs in Bitcoin,
Right.
like whatever message was in the Genesis block,
Sure.
and
Yeah. Chancellor in the brink. Yeah. Yep.
and then you are like, okay, cool. Maybe this is something, because the white paper is still quite technical.
Sure.
And if that's how you should write a white paper.
Right.
But the reasons behind Bitcoin, I think, are much bigger than
bigger than just the technicalities. of it.
Exact.
Right. Okay. I
Mhm.
feel you. All right. So, you have had several touches with Bitcoin. You got Bitcoin. What inspired you, or what compelled you to start Machankura?
Yeah. So after the reading, right, I was like, hey, it would be nice to actually share some of this information with people, especially people in my neighborhood. And then I was like, oh, damn, there's a barrier of entry, as you're saying. It's written in English.
Right.
Right. English is usually not the first language for most people in
True.
Africa, not the second language.
For most of the world, actually.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Maybe third, maybe fourth,
Right,
right? But I was schooled in English, so
Sure.
I'm quite comfortable reading in English.
Mhm.
But a lot of people don't want to conversate in
Right.
English, especially not in their own homes.
Yep,
Right?
yep.
So if we're gonna talk about Bitcoin in the household, we're gonna have to talk.
Use the local language.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So we started a project called Exonomia to translate Bitcoin literature
Okay. Cool.
into African languages, and that's doing quite well. We actually have the Bitcoin white paper in over 10 different African languages.
Sweet. Okay.
Right? And adding more and more books.
Excellent.
And then that is what tuned my thinking and approach. What barriers would people face if they're trying to use Bitcoin?
Okay.
That was the first one, the language barrier.
Right. Yeah.
And then the other one is internet. Right? I've been a software developer for a while, with Sigidli. Sigidli is actually the name of the company, right? Or the company I had set up all the way back in the day in high school. Not in high school, in university. And all these different projects I attempted would initially run through Sigidli. Right? And then I realized while running a few projects and releasing a few apps that not too many times do people have internet on their devices.
Right.
And the bigger issue is I would approach somebody in a very specific community. Right? We had poetry shows. One of them was called Word and Sound. So it happened monthly. It was a poetry slam league. Right? So the poets would gain points, and whoever won was the best poet for the year.
Yep.
So on and so forth. Right? And so I created an app for them to track the points, track videos. So like it became a proper league. And then I went to the show, announced the app, and during the intermission, one of the poets walked up to me with their phone, and she was like, yo, I can't install the app. It says I need to free up space. Right?
Yep.
And then I say, free up space. And then it showed her a list of apps she could delete to install this app. Right?
Yeah.
And I had intentionally made it as small as possible. I made this app very small, like 12 megabytes.
Sure. Yeah.
And then the list had Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp.
Yeah.
and she was not about to
Exactly.
delete any of these
Right.
apps.
That's her life, basically.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The IG life.
Mhm,
Yeah.
right. And this was a person who was a poet participating in that league.
Yep.
right? So now, what is the average audience member going to do when they're presented with that prompt?
Right.
And of course, if you have a flagship Android device or a flagship smartphone, this is not a problem. Your phone usually has enough memory on it to install multiple apps. You try them out, you delete them later. Or you sometimes never delete them. They just
and never use them either.
Yeah. Okay. So. Then I decided not to make apps, but then I got bit by a bug. Twitter. Back then, it didn't have Twitter threads, so I made an app that allowed you to write Twitter threads.
Right. Okay.
Third-party Twitter client, and then the API is restricted. You can never have the same feature set as what you have on the official Twitter app as a third-party Twitter client. And if you become successful, they cap your logins.
Okay.
So I don't know how many logins you can get, but I think it's like 1,000 something.
Right.
And then they implemented Twitter threading on the official Twitter app.
Okay.
So then I made the decision that, you know what, I'm never going to build on somebody else's platform.
Sure.
And then Bitcoin seemed very attractive, open source protocol. You can build on it. Nobody will change the rules on you. And you are also in a position to, run your own version of whatever. Right?
Yeah,
so whether you're running LND or whatever, you could, fork LND, add the features you want.
Right. Or you can even fork Bitcoin if you want your own Bitcoin.
Fork even Bitcoin. Right? And then I'm like, okay, this is literally a builder's dream.
Right.
And then I'm like, okay, let me see how I could marry the two. What barriers do we remove and what can we build to actually remove those barriers? So Machankura is a result of that.
Nice.
Got a Raspberry Pi, ran a node, lightning node, and then I was like, what can I run on this Pi? And Machankura is a direct result of that question.
Nice.
And,
all right. Okay, cool. That's a great sort of origin story. And we'll dig more into Machankura in a little bit.
Yeah.
But just to kind of close out this segment, couple more questions for you. Based on sort of your experience thus far, you're like a young man, but you've gone through quite a bit in terms of, personal and professional journey. Looking back, any do-overs in life? If you had to do one thing over, what would it be, if anything?
Oh, I would have accepted the Bitcoin in 2016, man.
Dang, all right.
That was 1.3 Bitcoin. The laptop I got doesn't work anymore. That doesn't, that would be a do-over. But ultimately it was part of the journey. So.
Exactly. So I wonder whether, because of that, I think it makes you value any Bitcoin you get now even more, perhaps. Does it?
No.
Okay.
Right. In the journey of doing the reading, investment books and everything, I realized that ultimately the only thing that is more valuable than Bitcoin is human life.
Right.
And that informed the direction I want to take in life. So yes, Bitcoin, most valuable asset, right? Whatever you can do, stack sats, hodl as hard as you can, right? But the potential that a human life has is also limitless, right? A Satoshi built Bitcoin, right? So what else could somebody else do?
Right.
I think you guys were saying the power of one. Right? So if you could invest in somebody and then what could that person do years later? Right? So if I ever see the opportunity to invest in somebody, I definitely let go of some Bitcoin for that, because I really do not know what type of things that person would do. But also, I have adopted the practice, and like in African culture, we believe in ancestors.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
And we have a lot of different rituals
Yeah.
to appease the ancestors, so on and so forth. And I have effectively said, in the same fashion, we praise the ancestors,
Right.
and make sacrifices to them. We should do that for the kids.
Right.
Yeah. So if something is not going right in my life, traditionally, as an African, I would consult with the ancestors.
Right. Same thing in the Asian culture, by the way.
Right. Right. So for me, I'm like, let me consult the kids.
Oh, all right.
What are you not happy with as a child in this family?
Right.
And what is it that we could do to, make you happier?
Yeah.
Right? So generally, I feel like if a child in the household is happy, whatever else, gets fixed.
Right.
Whatever issues I'm having get fixed. So then relating back to the value of Bitcoin, if hodling interferes with this relationship I have with kids, my kids, my niece, my nephew,
sure,
Bitcoin is not worth it.
Right.
But also, Bitcoin, the value of it as well is that I could save up for them as well, and they'd be set for life.
Yeah.
And what type of things would they do, 10, 20, 30 years from now? And ultimately, I don't think anyone in this room is going to get to see the future that Bitcoin unlocks.
The real hyper Bitcoinization. It's basically the kids, the generation that are like 10, 12 years old.
Yeah, and
they'll see it.
Yeah, well,
we might not. Yeah.
Will they see the end of the mining?
They might not even that.
You know?
Well, unless they get like artificial hearts and like robotic brains.
Exactly.
Shit, they'll live like 200 years and they will. Yeah.
So, and for me, the other side of that is, how would you get your kids, your kids' kids, to prepare for that future where there's no mining reward? And Bitcoin has been around for at least 100 years, right? How does a person mine Bitcoin?
Right.
And the answer I got to is effectively creating value.
Sure.
Proof of work.
Right.
I think we talked the other day about how Bitcoin is like the separation of work and state. Right? So
explain that a little bit, because we ran into each other. It was just like a simple statement, but we spent like half an hour. Maybe just expand on that. The separation of work and state.
So everyone has said, Bitcoin is a separation of money and state.
But this is slightly different.
Okay. So money, we could just say money is not real, right? Fiat, in the fiat sense, right? And ultimately, the state uses its control of money to control so many different things. Right? And the most primary thing is work. Right? And work is tied to living standards. Right? If you're reading Austrian economics, human action is propelled by the desire to get rid of discomfort.
Right.
Entrepreneurs are the people who usually figure out what is the most immediate need that people would pay to service.
Hey, Kgothatso, let's be clear though, because one comment I had when we talked about it, I made that statement. I don't know if you remember it, that, when we say work, we better be well-defined that is real work, right? It's not, remember when we talked about the administrator that goes in the office at 9, sits there, drinks coffee and leave at 5? That's not work. That's not the work we're talking about, right? We're talking about productive work, producing something.
Well,
correct or no? Or you also include that as work?
So, like if somebody's willing to pay you to come in at 9
and just sit there,
Okay. And
that's interesting. Okay.
And because, that might be somebody's most immediate needs.
Okay. To have somebody sit there, for 7 hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sip Vietnamese coffee with condensed milk in it.
Yeah. And, smoke cigarettes while doing it.
Right? And if you, as a person, identify that somebody's willing to pay you whatever you ask for you to do that, you are a successful entrepreneur.
Okay. So okay, let's before we sort of unpack that. The way then you define work is basically time and labor in exchange for value, correct? Whatever time and labor is. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right.
And I think the point of value is quite important because then value is subjective.
Cool. All right.
So
Gotcha.
as long as somebody finds value in what you're doing,
okay,
it may seem
I feel
unproductive.
That. Yeah. For us, it might be non-productive to sit there, but for somebody else, it may be that's what they need.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel you. I feel you. Yeah.
And so then now back to the state, right?
Right.
By them controlling money, controlling what type of work you can do, they ultimately control you.
Right.
Right. But if you are free to work,
right,
you are free to do so much.
Right.
I think there's a book I read, I forgot which book it is, but it has a statement like Chinese are very successful everywhere but in China. Right? So like a Chinese person who gets to America, who gets to Africa, who gets to Europe, becomes a very successful entrepreneur, very successful computer scientist, so on and so forth.
Yep.
But not so much in China.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And what is the
What's
cause?
The reason? Yeah.
Right? And a similar thing could be said for Nigerians as well. Right? Well, sadly, the Nigerians also have a bad image in the global world.
Well, the Nigerian Prince scheme. Yeah,
you know, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
but
I've had my share of Nigerian Prince emails. Sure.
Have you responded to a few? And
no, I don't. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Right? So, but ultimately, without the bad image that Nigerians have, if wherever they go, they become very successful and even more successful than they would have become in Nigeria. Right? So,
is it the society? Is what you're saying?
Not just the society, they're not free to work in their own country.
The freedom to work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? The freedom to do what they believe is the most valuable thing.
That adds the most value.
Right?
Okay.
Whether it's a Chinese in China, there's a lot of things the Chinese cannot do in China because, you know, of the laws in the country.
Well, and state directing of resources as well.
Exactly.
What they find that's valuable and what they don't think is valuable.
Yeah, the central planning of it all, right? Nigeria, it's a similar thing. And the resources do not go to the most productive individual.
Yes. It goes to the thing that gets the most political points.
Exactly.
Right. To the mafia.
Fine.
And so the reason why even the person sitting in an office drinking coffees for 7 hours works is because the person who's paying him to sit and drink coffee, if the person is actually being unproductive, will lose money.
Right. Okay.
And
I see.
Then the person drinking the coffee, once he runs this business into the ground, has some capital they could use to actually do something productive.
Right.
And the most important thing is Ludwig von Mises calls it a boom and a bust thing. Right.
Yep.
The most important thing is that the bust should happen. Right? Like it's a cycle. A booming economy and a bust.
Yes.
And the bust usually gets rid of all the stupid ideas.
They call it creative destruction.
Exactly, right? And only the strong survive. You know, strong men create good times, good times create weak men, weak men create bad times, so on and so forth. But in a fiat world, weak
they never let creative destruction actually happen.
So that, and I feel if we successfully separate work from the state, you could do whatever work you deem valuable, and not have to deal with whatever definition that comes from the state, and not have to deal with whatever law that comes from the state. People who come up with ideas would move away from the question of, is this legal?
Okay.
Right? Yeah, we were talking about Machankura earlier on, whether or not I need a money transmitter license, right? if that is the first question I asked myself when I had the idea,
you wouldn't have done it.
Exactly,
Right,
right?
right.
So what more would a person, what more would people do
Yeah.
if the first question they asked is, would somebody find this valuable?
Instead of, is this legal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? And as long as somebody will find this valuable and somebody will pay to use it,
Yeah.
then you should do it.
Right.
We shouldn't ask what the state thinks.
Right.
A lot of things are, valuable, drugs, sex, so on and so forth,
Yeah.
that the state doesn't deem valuable.
Yeah.
Well, the state is against a lot of this stuff.
Right.
But sex, the world's longest profession,
Yeah.
right? Drugs,
Yeah.
as bad as they are,
Yeah.
right? There's whole industry.
Yeah.
The thing with drugs, if you set yourself as a big pharma,
Yeah.
you could sell as many drugs as you want.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
You could push whatever type of experimental drugs on the global population
Yep.
and make as many profits as you want.
Yep.
Right? But be somebody in your selling, substances to people in your own neighborhood,
Yep.
and then you get arrested
Sure.
because you don't have the license.
The
required.
paper.
The
right?
paper.
The paper.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So ultimately, I believe Bitcoin is going to bring through a separation between work and state, and protests are useless.
Right.
Ultimately, people protest to disrupt
Yeah.
things, right? But imagine if you could move all your output
Yeah.
from your work
Yeah.
away from the government you want to protest.
Right.
That is something else. So instead of saying on this day we will not work, on this week we will not work, say on this week, on this day, we're going to take all the output from all our work and not give it to them.
It's a property boards instead of...
The what?
It's a property boards from the state.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like an argument because you want to keep fighting with the state and you don't
Yeah.
want that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just want to walk away.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? And then ultimately, your economic output funds the state. Right? So whatever you don't like about the state, as long as you are economically productive, you are funding them.
Right.
All the wars in the world are funded by American taxpayers. Right? Russia versus Ukraine is funded by American taxpayers. Right? The Ukraine side of it. Right? And American taxpayers, you say, I'm forced to do this. I'm forced to pay taxes. Otherwise, I go to prison. Right? But ultimately, they need to, be responsible. Right? And say, okay, I may be forced to do this, but I don't want to. What Muhammad Ali did when I think it was the Vietnam War.
Yeah,
as
he
well.
refused to go to Vietnam War. They stripped him of the championship belt.
Yeah,
And he wasn't allowed to box again during his prime for 5 years.
exactly.
And when he came back, he still kicked everybody's ass. So there you go. Yeah.
Exactly, right? And that was a huge sacrifice for him.
Right. He was at his prime. Yeah.
Right? So imagine if Muhammad Ali could then say, instead of, being an American, I'm going to move and be something else that would not require me to be in this war.
Yeah.
Right? And he's still in his prime, right? Because now the sad thing is everyone lost Muhammad Ali in his prime.
Right. Exactly.
We didn't get to
We
experience.
didn't really get to see peak Muhammad Ali. Really.
Yeah, exactly, right? So what would that have been like if he could have
Right.
moved somewhere else and said, okay, instead of being an American that is required to go to the war, the war I don't want to fight, I'm just going to go be this other thing.
No, that's cool, man. That's beautiful because you're talking about it and all your analogies are all, resonating with me. But the Muhammad Ali story is right. Because at that time, again, the whole world basically says the most productive thing you can do is become, retain your world championship belt. But the American government says, even though you're the best boxer that's ever lived in our history, you should fucking go pick up a gun and go fight in Vietnam where you have no beef with anybody.
And
It's like he's all, fuck that.
and you will also lose the thing that makes you a good
Yes.
boxer because you don't come back the same, right?
Yep, exactly.
America,
Well, at least you don't come back mentally the same.
Exactly, right? So, yeah. So, for me, that is the thing. Separation of work and state.
Beautiful, dude. Love it.
Do we get Muhammad Ali in his prime?
Yep.
And so on and so forth. So, what
Okay.
does the future look like in that
I
regard?
feel you. All right. Okay. Last question in this segment. Has Bitcoin already won, Kgothatso?
No, far from
Okay.
it.
Why not?
I'd even say Bitcoin is losing.
Oh shit.
Right.
Oh shit. Controversial topic there.
That's
Let's go.
a new take.
Let's go. Yeah.
So ultimately, I compared.
Okay.
Bitcoin came out around the same time as mobile money in Kenya.
Yep.
Right?
M-Pesa, right?
M-Pesa,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then I compared where M-Pesa is today
Yeah.
to where Bitcoin is today.
Yep.
Bitcoin lost in Kenya, ultimately.
Yeah, sure.
Right? We could look at the reasons why it lost.
But it doesn't quite matter.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it lost. Right?
Yep.
And now it's harder to get Bitcoin into Kenya because M-Pesa is there. Okay?
Right.
This is a country that didn't have digital payments.
Yeah.
And M-Pesa was created outside of, the umbrella of government. It was rolled out by the telecom.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, Bitcoin totally lost in Kenya. And a few other African countries that then copied Kenya for the M-Pesa, the mobile money digital payments method. Right? And then now I'm looking at other countries like America, Europe, the developed countries, who sadly have very archaic banking systems. Right? Somebody was posting that I think the guy who used to work at Facebook but then started a lightning company. I forgot what his company is called, Lightspark, maybe something like that.
Lightspark.
Yeah, and then he said his bank called him and told him somebody used his banking details, his public banking details, routing number and everything, to move money from his account. And of course, they picked it up as fraud. But for the time being, his account has been deducted and he's going to get the funds back. And because, well, it's an archaic system. It uses the legal system to work.
On a central database on one central server.
Exactly. Right. So then I'm like, why are these guys not using Bitcoin? A guy who's running a Bitcoin company. And in that sense, he lost. There's also very few Bitcoiners who use Bitcoin. Jamison Lopp, since 2013, 2014, decided that his whole retirement fund is going to be in Bitcoin. And he written blogs on how to do it and how to do it in a way that what's the word?
Secure.
Recognized. Secure, but recognized by the government in a self-directed
self-directed IRA.
And then I'm like, this is just one guy. Why is nobody else doing that as well? And only now are other companies doing it. I think there's now
Unchained.
Bitcoin.
Unchained Cap was doing it.
And Swan is also
doing it.
And then I'm like, okay, Bitcoin even lost there. So what are the reasons why? Even in El Salvador, Bitcoin is legal tender. We can celebrate that. That's a huge milestone. But a lot of people still prefer to get the USD as a form of payment. And personally, a lot of people say volatility is the reason why they wouldn't use Bitcoin on a day-to-day basis. But how do you say
that's
that?
relative to fiat, though.
Relative to fiat. But and how do you say that in a year where, over the past 2 years, the Bitcoin price has been quite stable compared to fiat? With fiat inflation and all of these things. And I don't care. We're in a dip right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, oh, Bitcoin is still outperforming my national currency.
Sure.
In some countries, you could say it's even outperforming the US dollar.
Well, in many countries where you have hyperinflation,
Mhm.
Bitcoin is actually more stable than local currency by far, right? Yeah.
Yeah, with its volatility.
Exactly. Even with the volatility,
Mhm,
right?
So in that regard, Bitcoin has also failed because it's unable to unsit very much more volatile currencies.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, cool. What is it then we would need to do as Bitcoiners to actually
Perfect.
push it forward?
That's a very good pivot into Machankura.
Mhm.
So Machankura is a Bitcoin transfer and remittance service using SMS on non-feature phones, but you can also do it on feature phones. Describe it a little bit, sir.
Yeah. So non-smartphones. And yeah, you could also use it on non-smartphones. On smartphones, yeah. So the correction, we technically don't do remittance.
Oh, okay. Just transfers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just Bitcoin.
Just Bitcoin.
Send and receive Bitcoin.
Okay. Apologies. Yeah.
And yeah, so ultimately it's built on GSM.
Okay.
2G technology.
Yep. Okay.
USSD to be specific, and USSD was also popularized by mobile money, but any country has USSD.
Yeah.
Right, and you just dial a code *123#.
Yep.
Right? And then you can think about it like a website.
Yep.
You know, old WAP.
Yeah.
And ultimately, your telecom connects you to my server.
Right. Okay.
And then it's a text-based interface, prompt and response.
Okay.
You see text and you give a response. You input your response instead of clicking. You input. Right?
Yeah.
So I did it just to unlock all those people who don't have internet-connected devices or devices with enough free space to install a Bitcoin wallet, and just convenience as well.
Sure. Okay. And this next question is for the haters out there who say that, Machankura, really cool, service over 2G GSM based on USSD standard, but it's still custodial. What's up with that? Respond to that, sir.
Yeah, so ultimately, it's a question of what's technically possible, right? But it's also a question of, do we want people using Bitcoin or not?
Right.
I'm a huge advocate for self-custody.
Sure.
But if you cannot self-custody because it's technically impossible for you to self-custody, what are you going to do? And I was asked 2 questions at the conference that kind of relate to this.
Yeah.
The first one, I forgot it, but the first one is with regards to whether or not as more smartphones and internet penetration rolls in, people will move away from using
the non-feature phones, right?
Non-feature phones, right? And my response to that is, you need investments to actually make that happen.
Right.
It's a very valid business opportunity.
Has
a very valid business use case
for the telecoms.
Right. For everyone. Starlink as well.
Right. Yeah.
But how are you going to move money into that country and set up the infrastructure?
Right.
And once you capture the market, how are you going to move profits out of that country? A country whose currencies are losing value, are hyperinflating. So as an investor, as an entrepreneur, you see a country like Malawi, you see a country like Nigeria. How are you going to move money out of that? And my response to that question was, even in Nigeria, where Starlink has launched, Starlink wants you to pay in dollars, right? But then the country has capital controls that caps a transaction to like $20.
How are you going to pay for that?
Yeah. And to pre-order Starlink is $99.
Right.
So however big
what about the $79
right?
difference?
Yeah. So however big the Nigerian population is, you cannot, pre-order.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So the only people who can pre-order are the ones that get paid in dollars, like via PayPal or whatever,
Yeah.
and then they can pre-order.
Correct.
But then everyone else is secluded from that. So
Right.
can you give these people a way for them to earn and then pay PayPal? And then so for me, if these people could transact in Bitcoin,
Right.
and then move themselves up economically, move their living standards up, then they can self-custody, get a iPhone, whatever. Because even smartphones, if we're gonna have what happened in India with the smartphones, the transition away from feature phones to smartphones, 4G devices and all, somebody has to make that investment.
Right.
Either the investment comes from the country or it comes from outside the country. But if it cannot come from within the country, or even the most moneyed people in the country are trying to move their money out of the country,
right,
you won't see it happening.
Okay.
Right? So for me, the self-custodial approach, the third-party custodial Bitcoin wallet is a transitioning phase to a person having the economic freedom to get themselves to a self-custodial thing.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And also technically we're going to have a self-custodial option as well,
Awesome.
using the SIM card to store private keys and all of that.
Well, that's pretty sick.
Yeah,
Okay.
There's a few missing pieces. Like Electrum does not have a GSM interface.
Okay.
So we are gonna try set up a GSM interface for Electrum.
Sweet.
And even your phone should be able to interpret an SMS that gets sent to it, where that SMS is a Bitcoin transaction. Right. So
I'm trying to picture storing my private keys on a SIM card. That's kind of because all like these hardware, signing devices are essentially that, right?
Yeah.
It stores this thing and then you sign it, and you can do air gap, whatever. But any card that can store that amount of data, you're set.
Yeah.
Fucking sick, bro.
And
all right.
Yeah. The SIM card already has a secure element on it that is storing private keys. Like your credit card also has that.
Dang. All right.
So
This is new. Yeah. Okay, cool.
What are the security loopholes?
Well, with every hardware device, as soon as somebody gains access to it, the security is, like whether it's a laptop, whether it's
an open window in that regard.
You need to physically secure it. Right? Because with physical access, a person is in a position to actually fool the device, right? Through physics even, right? Ultimately keep your physical devices secure and make sure that they don't end up in the attacker's hands, right? Whether it's a laptop, whether it's a hardware wallet, and you would get a project like a Seed Signer,
right?
Their approach
that
is
wipes the private key each time you use it.
Because of this ultimately, right? As soon as hardware, so any hardware wallet that keeps a seed on the device, you should see it as soon as this hardware wallet is in the possession of the attacker, it's done. Yeah. There's also a YouTube video, I think, where an old ledger got its seed read out because of obviously the attacker had the hardware wallet in his possession and figured out that, okay, if I do these actions, I can get it to spit out the private key. And I think he had like 1 or 2 attempts. So he got another hardware wallet, tested everything out. And then when he was sure that he could make it work, did it on the wallet of interest. Okay.
All right. Let's maybe talk a little bit about the UX or the user experience of like a typical Machankura customer. Like what happens? Like he wants to use Machankura, he wants to get some Bitcoin. He's got his phone. What happens?
Yeah, so ultimately, you get your phone out, go to the dialing pad, dial star 833 hash, theoretically speaking. The number's different in every country. And then you're presented with a prompt. Do you want to register an account? Do you want to learn more about Machankura? Do you want to learn more about Bitcoin? So on and so forth. You register an account by just entering a 5-digit PIN. Then you have an account.
That's the only KYC there is. Just that. It's getting an OTP, basically, right?
Okay. So then once you have an account and you're accessing the service, the menu changes. Right? Now you could send Bitcoin, receive Bitcoin, do your balance. What else? Oh, barter Bitcoin.
Oh,
Okay.
what is that?
Yeah, so it's technically spending Bitcoin.
Okay.
Right. We have integrations with Bitrefill and CryptoConvert.
All right.
So even though you don't have an internet connected device, you could still buy things off of Bitrefill like airtime, grocery vouchers, fuel vouchers, so on and so forth. But the reasoning for the word barter is because, I want to put it in the people's head what they're actually doing. Right.
Like value for value exchange. Basically,
right.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if you have Bitcoin, you should be asking everyone you are economically transacting with, do you accept Bitcoin?
Right.
And that is how barter works.
Yeah.
Right? If you have water and you try to drink a coffee but you don't have cash, you can ask, do you accept this bottle of water for a glass of coffee?
Right.
That's how barter works. So if we are at a coffee shop and we don't have cash, but we have Bitcoin, we can ask, do you accept Bitcoin?
Right.
The answer is usually no, right? But soon enough, or if you come enough times to the same coffee shop,
they'll probably say yes at some point.
Exactly, right? And that is what we need, I believe we need in the Bitcoin space, this transitioning period where people are trying to barter their Bitcoin for goods or services.
Yeah.
And then, we can transition off bartering Bitcoin to spending Bitcoin, where the expectation is I come with Bitcoin and I spend my Bitcoin. Right. So that is the thing. And then back to the menu when you are receiving Bitcoin, it's a Lightning address. So
LN URL?
Yeah, LN URL, cool. Lightning address, human readable.
Right.
By default, it's your phone number at 833.mobi.
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to, I'm just going to, sidetrack. I don't want to flex, dude, but maybe I should. I just got myself a vanity Wallet of Satoshi address.
How did you get it?
Dude, so now I'm like Piccolo at walletofsatoshi.com, bro.
It's got
Real
an insider.
Piccolo, baby. Hell yeah.
How did you get it, Piccolo?
Big shout out to Jordan of Wallet of Satoshi. Brother, you the man.
Yeah, no, I'm also going to get mine as well. Machankura at Wallet of Satoshi.
You need to. I'll hook you up. I'll definitely hook you up with Jordan. Yeah.
Instead of a blue elephant 72, right?
Bro, no, before again, sidetrack audience. Plebs, don't mind us. But basically, you know how they assign you an address?
Yeah, no.
My original address was Unsound Greece 13.
First word is not good for Bitcoin.
Right. I'm like, dude, I'm Piccolo. I don't need this. And then yesterday, we were sitting, having drinks, and sitting right there to the Wallet of Satoshi developers from Australia. I'm like, bro, can I ask you a favor? And he said, absolutely. By 1 a.m. before I left the bar, boom. Piccolo, yeah. So anyway, sorry. Let's get back to where we're standing.
Yeah, if the Wallet of Satoshi guys are listening to this, guys, make it an option that a person should be able to change their own username.
That's coming.
App.
That's coming.
Oh, okay, cool.
2 weeks TM.
Oh, okay. No, then I don't need the favor. Right? So,
well, but 2 weeks, in Bitcoin means whatever.
That's one difficulty adjustment period. So
Yep. All right. Okay, sorry, let's get back to this a little bit. Okay, I can see that, the UX and all, but then, we're talking that now you're sort of onboarding people onto this new user experience. They're experiencing Bitcoin, they're experiencing value for value exchange. And then the natural question comes, as you're building this out, you've heard this, I'm sure, from potential, why not integrate or actually try to become the rails for M-Pesa? Why not integrate?
Oh yeah, so
because that's the biggest mobile money out there, right, in Africa.
Yeah. Right. So my thinking is double-fold. One of the reasons is that ultimately the regulations. For me, it's much easier as Bitcoin only.
Yeah.
Right? All the central banks in Africa, not all of them, except for Central African Republic, of course, where Bitcoin is legal tender.
Right.
All the central banks in Africa, also not all of them, except those that didn't make this notice.
Yep.
The ones that did make a notice said, we don't issue Bitcoin, so we don't regulate Bitcoin.
Right.
It's illegal to exchange Bitcoin.
Yep.
And trade Bitcoin for fiat. Right?
Yep.
And so a lot of companies, even in Nigeria, cannot run an exchange with fiat on ramps,
Right.
with a bank account.
Yep.
They have to do peer-to-peer and all this.
Sure.
And for me, I looked at that and I'm like, great, I can be a Bitcoin company because
Sure.
they don't regulate Bitcoin.
Yep.
And then what else happened? So something else happened. Oh yeah, and then I looked at what other guys did.
Right.
Because I'm not the first one to come up with this idea.
Sure.
2019, somebody had a wallet called Capucha or something like
Okay.
that.
Also Bitcoin related?
Yeah. Right? And they were a USSD Bitcoin wallet with
Right.
the M-Pesa integration.
Oh, okay.
Right? And then M-Pesa took away the integration. It shut down the integration.
Okay.
For some reason, they didn't see value in being a Bitcoin wallet for
Right.
people without internet. Right?
Sure,
So
sure.
then they shut themselves down.
Right.
And nobody had approached them to say, yo, shut your wallet down. So they didn't see value in that. And I'm like, wow, that's weird. I see value in being a Bitcoin wallet
Right.
for people without internet-connected devices.
Yep.
But on top of that, I also have seen a recurring thing with African startups that initially start with Bitcoin as an idea,
Yeah.
but then end up becoming remittance.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Remittance without even the Bitcoin element.
Right.
And the thing is, fiat businesses require you to jump through so many hoops
Yep.
that as soon as they, put you on the podium and give you the medal and say, cool, now you can do fiat,
Yeah. Yeah.
you don't want to touch anything that would put your medal and your ordaining
Right.
approval at risk.
Right.
Because once they take that away, you are not able to run your business anymore
Right.
in the fiat sense.
Yeah.
Even before they give you the paper that says, okay, now you can run your fiat business, they tell you you can't run it using this, so
Yeah.
please take away your Bitcoin. Right?
Yeah.
Because if we remember as well, after El Salvador became legal tender, made Bitcoin legal tender, a lot of the countries around El Salvador, Central America, South America, were rumored to consider doing the same thing.
Right.
Honduras, I think Guatemala,
Yeah.
Panama.
Yeah.
Right? But then these countries needed to get loans from the IMF.
Okay. Yep.
And then the IMF was like, yeah, we're going to give you these loans if you take away your or stop your
Take away the Bitcoin plans.
Yeah,
Right.
Argentina was, I think, a bigger story. Right? And Argentina, a country experiencing inflation,
100% inflation.
Yeah.
99%.
Yeah.
To get that IMF loan, decided, okay, cool, we won't even mention Bitcoin anymore. Or the opposition party mentions it, but that doesn't matter.
Right.
So for me, I understand fully that, okay, cool. If this is going to happen, I can't have fiat integration.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And it's not a question of a specific country, because at least one country would give me, I think South Africa, I'm in South Africa, I should be able to get that, do your fiat business and do your
that
fiat
piece of paper.
Yeah, right. But I have seen enough companies, as soon as they get that piece of paper, they totally turn their backs on Bitcoin and whatever future it looks like. And M-Pesa is a great example, right? Because what the guys at M-Pesa did, they built a new track for themselves, right?
A mobile neobank.
Yeah, right. And they didn't say we need the bank's approval to do this.
Yep.
They just said, okay, cool. You bring cash, we give you M-Pesa tokens.
Yeah.
Right. Then they set up an agent network.
Yeah.
Right, so that people could go to these agents and swap the cash for
These tokens.
These tokens, right? And ultimately, that is, I believe, what Bitcoin needs.
Yeah.
Bitcoin needs a whole agent network.
Right.
I won't even call them agents. A whole network of nodes that would accept cash and give Bitcoin.
Right.
And vice versa.
Be the onboarding, offboarding sort of storefront. or anything. Yeah, a channel. Right.
And if that exists, we do not need any relationship with the banks.
Yep.
Right? Just let the people bring their cash, and we will convert their cash for Bitcoin. Right? Operation Choke 2.0 will not work in this world. Right? So that's ultimately the idea and ultimately the reasoning for it.
I'm trying to follow your logic, and now I think I kind of get it. Because yesterday I was, again, you remember I was peppering you with, additional questions. But now that you explain it and I've had a chance to think about it, it's interesting because the way I would describe it is the fact that M-Pesa exists outside of the traditional banking system actually proves your point.
Yeah.
That you can actually do another one, but the fact is your tool, monetary tool, is just so much better than fucking fiat.
Exactly.
So, but you're just still early. Basically, that's it.
Yeah, and we don't have to think
like
we're
that.
early. Right.
All right. I feel it. I feel it. Now I get it. That clicked for me. Excellent. All right. Okay. Now, dude, now that sort of things are clicking in my head, what's your biggest challenge or challenges that you're facing at the moment? Or what do you foresee as your next roadblock, I guess, for Machankura?
Well,
because you talk about Tanzania a little bit, maybe that's a bother, maybe it's not, but what is it?
Yeah, ultimately it's not a bother, right? The genie's out the bottle.
Sure.
But I already know what to do.
Yep.
And it's not just Tanzania, in every country.
Yeah.
I ultimately would need to set up local offices and everything. But I want to then do the self-custody option.
Nice.
Get rid of all the counterparty risk.
Cool.
Because it's ultimately much easier to sleep without counterparty risk.
You don't want to become the honeypot, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Right. And so that would be my focus over the next few months.
Sweet.
Hopefully a few months, it doesn't become a few years.
Yeah.
And
are you at the moment sort of looking for like funding to get to the next stage, or how are you dealing with sort of that capital part of your business?
I'm actually raising around. Trying to conclude it now.
Cool.
And then it's all systems go.
Excellent, dude. Great to hear that. That's probably a good place to sort of end our segment, but let us flip the table on you. For our last thing before we leave is we give our guests an opportunity to ask us, both of us, one of us, any of us, one question, any question. If you don't want to do it, we can just finish.
Okay, cool.
Either one.
So which Asian country do you guys believe will be the first to adopt Bitcoin?
Okay. You want to go first, Sovereign?
And by adopt Bitcoin, I mean at least 50% of all transactions in a day are made in Bitcoin.
Okay.
So maybe Vietnam, because they already having infrastructure like Neutron Pay, or like people can just like really easy like use Bitcoin and buy too. Thailand, let's see in the coming years, but we don't have anything similar to Neutron Pay in that regard. So we'll have to educate politicians in that regard. So hopefully by next July, whenever we have the Bitcoin conference, we're gonna start our journey to bring hyper Bitcoinization to Thailand. And any other Asian country. Yeah, I haven't been to Japan, Korea, China. I don't think it's happening anytime soon. So I'll stick to Vietnam.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. I got a dark horse. Okay, you finished?
Yeah, Vietnam, Neutron Pay are leading the scene, the hyper Bitcoinization here.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. I got a dark horse, man. Yeah, all the things you said are true. I don't think it'll get to a certain segment of the population, but I don't think it'll get to what Kgothatso was saying, which is 50%. For that, my dark horse bet, Myanmar. Because they're the most fucking disenfranchised. They got a shit currency. They got fucking China fucking with their leg on one neck. And they got the US with the leg on their stomach. And the fucking generals are just fucking raping, pillaging the country. I think that's where Bitcoin can help the most. At least that's my hope.
Okay.
So for me, my dark horse, Myanmar.
Cool.
Okay. Kgothatso, why don't you tell our audience where to find you if they want to get in touch, and any parting thoughts for the people out there.
Yeah, ultimately, you can go to the website 833.mobi, and it's a good website. Nobody can make a spelling mistake when they access it, right? So that's the Machankura website, and you should see all the other social media at the bottom of the page at the footer. And what else is there? Oh yeah, the number 833 is the default Bitcoin port. So if you forget what the website is, just Google the default Bitcoin port and you will find the domain.mobi.
Yep.
And what else? Parting thoughts, ultimately. Quit your fiat jobs and let's, bring hyper Bitcoinization to fruition. We're going to need as many people as possible. I was telling a friend of mine that the CBDCs will not win because ultimately they can't find good talent, right? And let's not underestimate that finding good talent is quite hard. And the people who usually work or would take the job at the CBDCs are not trying to move the needle. They want to do a lot of risk-free stuff. So that's my parting thoughts on the topic.
Excellent. And on that note, that's a wrap